What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr Wargames, and today I'm bringing you my second place Vanquished Soul deck. Now there's a couple of things in here that I definitely want to change, a couple of things that I was quite happy with, and the whole idea of this profile is to kind of again take you through the experimental process when you're building a deck like this, of what works, what doesn't work, why you should try stuff out and why you should change it about. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, we're going to dive head first into the profile. So the way I've laid these profiles out is I do it attributes so you can kind of see the ratios and levels that I play. So for the darks, I was only playing 6 in the main deck, which was, it kind of worked out okay. And the 6 that I was playing was of course triple Borgar and triple Mad Love. Now the only other dart that I feel that is worth running in the main deck is something like D-Shifter. Other options are stuff like DD Crow as well, but that will really depend on the environment that you'll go into and the matchups that you feel you're going to face. So ultimately this was a change that I made. I was like, okay, well let's see what happens if I put Shifter in the side and I cut the darks down. Now, there are a lot of effects that you kind of you need the dark for. So obviously for Raisin's column effect, you need a dark and a fire. For the draw effect of a Borg, you need a dark. But I was also playing Pot of Prosperity, so there was a couple of times where I had to resort to the burn of Borgar rather than the draw. And then the bounce off of Mad Love, I used it a couple of times, nothing too major. And then of course the Caesar as well. But the idea was that if at any point you were missing a dark, you would get to the dark as early as you can. And then my strategy is, when I'm bouncing with Borgar, if I have the option to, always try and bounce back the same attribute where at all possible. So Borgar would always try and bounce back Mad Love if I already had a Raisin in the hand or in the graveyard that could be added back with the Rock of Vanquished. Moving on to the Earths, now this is going to shock a lot of people. I cut this down by 1. So usually you're playing 2 Caesar and 1 Panther. I decided to cut out 1 Caesar. And the reason I did that is when I took this to locals on Wednesday, I ended up getting 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, and I just bricked on high level monsters. So I was like, right, okay, well what one do I feel comfortable cutting? Arguably I could cut Borgar down 1, but I felt that it was a lot easier to kind of resolve his effect and Borgar become more of a pain in the backside. So I decided to go with a 1-on-1 and see how that worked. Now Panther actually put in a lot of work for one of my matchups because I was able to go Panther and I was able to constantly keep revealing Caesar. So basically the idea was that I would go during my turn, I would summon down the Caesar, bouncing back the Panther, do everything I needed to do, link off the Caesar, put it in the graveyard for the Rock of the Vanquished, special summon down Panther off of Rock of the Vanquished, Rock would then add back the Caesar, and then I was able to kind of reveal Caesar to protect Panther from being destroyed by battle, and that allowed me to kind of regain some resource as I was pushing through. For the other Earth monsters, we were still playing triple Fenrir, and I was also playing the 1 Planet. Now, this was obviously the idea that not only does Planet boost all of your monsters, but again, it was technically like having a 4th copy of Fenrir. Now, there was a couple of times where I would be drawing Fenrir a little bit later in game when I already had monsters lined up on board, and that's where he became the Earth Reveal attribute rather than anything else. Because it's one of them cards that what you want to make sure of, or the deck in general, is if you are getting monsters to the hand, you want to be able to get your Earths, Fires, and Darks as consistently as you possibly can, and even if they do get stuck in your hand, you want to have the ability to constantly keep revealing them. Like, if I've got a Wind stuck in hand, for example, something like a Draw and Lock Bird, that's of no use to me whatsoever. I have to use it as a hand trap, and if my opponent is playing a round draw or it's just not as effective in that matchup, then it's not as good. So that's why I've come with the triple Fenrir. There were a couple of times, more so Rise Heart. Like, Rise Heart bugged me beyond belief because literally in the game that I lost, and it was against Sprite, in the game that I lost was literally because I opened up Rise Heart both games, and I was like, I had no way to use it. I was like, this is so annoying. For the other Earths, I was playing the 1 Regulus and the 2 Ghost Spell. Regulus was actually a really interesting option, and the way that this works is you would go 2 level 4s, goes into the Merrymaker, into Saga, Saga searches out Regulus, and then Regulus can attach to a Borgar in the graveyard. So that was actually kind of a cool little route. There was one time that I hard opened this, but I opened it with the Borgar, which is cool to kind of set up in the gates, and then you don't need to worry about a Nibiru or anything like that. It was an interesting option. I'm not set that I'll be keeping it in the deck. Again, it's something that I keep trialing around, and I'll decide, you know, whether I want to keep it or not. I feel the Earth representation is pretty high when you're considering that technically you've got 3 Fenrir, 3 Earths here, and then the 2 Vanquished Souls, you're rocking at least 8, technically 9 if you include this as well. With the Darks, you're only rocking 6, and then for the Fires, we were going with triple Raisin, pretty standard on that one. The 1 Pluton, can't wait till we get the new card and I can finally possibly get rid of this. The 1 Raisin that just would not leave my hand the entire time. And then triple Ash Blossom, followed by double Dogoran. I completely cut Karakura, and the reason I cut Karakura is I didn't face any Kashtira's. So there was no Kashtira's at my locals, and I was like, at the end of the day, a Kaiju will probably do the job a little bit better for me than having to bait it out. Having to bait the negate out to then Karakura it to then revive from the graveyard. Like, rather than wasting that card to be bait out, I can just go Kaiju and build off the back of it. Another card that I was playing that technically acts as a fire was 2 Durandal. Now, 100% this is way too many fires. And what I mean by that is I was playing 2 Durandal with 2 Prosperity and 2 Small World. So, of all 3 of these, the ones that worked the best to me was Small World and Pot Prosperity. I know a lot of people don't like Small World, but again, my hypothesis behind Small World over something like Durandal is the fact that I could activate Small World and bridge my way to a Kaiju, and that Kaiju is then just an instant board breaker because it's very rare that people are going to negate the Small World. Yes, they may draw and lock bird you after the Small World, but that's the exact same thing with a Durandal and a Pot Prosperity, whereas Durandal only has the 1 target. And there were so many times where I was seeing myself with 2 Durandal, or I was seeing myself with Raisin plus a Durandal, and it's like, yes, I get it, I can get another fire to my hand, but it really wasn't adding a lot to my board. One thing that I could arguably consider, and I haven't, this has only just popped into my head, is Fireflint Lady, because you could technically, if you've already got a Raisin, is you could technically activate Durandal, get Fireflint, and then special summon down the Fireflint, and then trigger off the Fireflint to give you another Raisin, which gives you the rank 4 access. Not that that's what you want to be doing, but honestly, it's a 42 card deck, and I would cut the Durandal out. Like, I'm happy to cut those out. Small World is still questionable. I just like the fact that it could lead me to Karakura, it could lead me to Ash. In certain lines of play, you can also lead you to a Draw and Lockbird in another turn when you've sided in. So yeah, I was kind of happy with Small World and Prosperity, but I really wasn't happy with Durandal. Then we've got Triple Stake Your Soul. You know, not much more needs to be said about that. Another card that I am highly considering is Triple Tactics Thrust. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be like, what, why? Well, it's mainly for the side deck, and it's just to get to Eradicator. And I was like, I want to try this out. I want to see how this goes. I tried it out with just on its own, and it very rarely came up. Like, I very rarely put it in. But then I was like, at the end of the day, if I put Thrust in, and I also want to put in, I want to try and put in Triple Tactic Talents back into the deck as well. So what Thrust can get me to is it can get me to Prosperity and get me to Small World and get me to Stake Your Soul, but then it can also get you to Eradicator. And it's probably going to be more effective when you get to the side deck, because I was getting hand trapped a lot. I was getting like Ash Blossoms were being dropped. I don't think I got Nibiru, which was quite nice. I was able to kind of play around that. But the idea is that more times than not, you're getting hand trapped and then not putting monsters on the board. So you want to ideally be using Thrust to get you a card like Eradicator with Borga, and you're like, okay, cool, Borga's going to either draw me a card or it's going to burn you for 15, and then I can flip Eradicator, get rid of Borga, which is great for the Regulus play, and then I'm no longer need to worry about the trap matchup or the spell matchup. Then we've got the 1 Vanquished Soul Dust Devil. Really like this card. Like, if you bait out a Dragoon, you can then use this and it's non-target flip. Really kind of cool. Continued, pretty standard, and then Rota. And the last cards was Imperm and Triple Tikaboo. Yes, I'm still maining Tikaboo. For my local environment, it was weird, because I ended up facing a Warrior deck, a Dragon deck, which this was an MVP in, but then when I was facing Sprite, it was pretty dead. It just meant that I had to go around the block a little bit to do it. So it's one of the ones where it's like, I kind of like the idea of it being in the main, but then also I understand why it can very easily go into the side. So I don't know about this, whether I want to keep it in the main yet. I'm still trying around with it. There's times where it's just coming up and it's like, as degenerate as it is, I know that if I flip this Tikaboo in this matchup, I'm going to win this matchup. So that's kind of the thing that's letting me keep it in there. But then if I do try and shift it to go second, or if I try and shift it with Triple Tactic Talents, then at least I'm kind of adapting it a little bit more that way. Moving on to the extra deck, of course, pretty standard on 3 Rock of Vanquish. I actually had to go through all 3 of these once. So I was in a Cyber Dragon matchup, And literally the first one he went, special summon down Cyber Dragon, contact fuse. I was like, bruh. And then the second one, he did the exact same thing again. I was like, yo. And then the last one, I got the third one on board. And luckily, I had imperms and everything else to start stopping the Cyber Dragon contact fuse, pop the Cyber Dragon contact fuse, everything else like that. Phoenix, Cerberus, Security Dragon, and Unicorn. I'm considering swapping the Security Dragon back out for Donna. There's just a couple of times where the Donna pop effect is a little bit better than the Cerberus for the pure fact that it sacrifices itself. Like, I don't need a card in hand, and it doesn't let me burn through my hand resource, because the idea with this deck is you want to maintain your hand resource to maintain all of those attributes you can reveal. So, something I'm considering, but I understand Cerberus being just as good. One access code. I never made it, to be honest. I didn't need to, so. And then for the XYZs, we've got one Bagooska, one Spring Guns Merrymaker into a Sargus. And then, of course, we've got the Big Eye, the Shangri-La, the Rise Heart, and the Zeus. Never made it, never made it, and never made it. So the XYZ factor of it is probably one of the ones that you rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And that's probably why they're still in here. The idea is you can either hard make the Rise Heart or you're going to have to try and cheese it out of a Shangri-La. Both very easily doable. But with this kind of lineup in your extra deck, especially if you're going up against the Kashtira matchup, or like if you go to a regional or something and you know that 60+% of them is going to be Kashtiras, it might be worth having Ghost Reaper in your side deck, because then that counts as your Dark Monster. Arguably as well, because there is quite a bit of flex in here, if you're able to pinpoint an exact extra deck monster that your opponent cannot play with, you could very easily main deck the Reaper and then just try and go blind second, and then you Reaper their core card. Stuff like Sprind, Gigantic, Rise Heart, Shangri-La, you name it. You're able to kind of like rip those apart, rip round Zeus's, and that could be quite invaluable for you. Mirror Jades, Dragoons, like I expect by the time we get to Euros at the end of this month, Dragoons are going to be everywhere in Branded, purely because of duality. I'm also going to show you my side deck as well. So my side deck was, of course, the one Eradicator. I was umming and ahhing about finding the space to get Frost in here, but the one Eradicator, yes, I know I can play it more. I decided to drop a Nibiru down to 2. I was like, right, okay, we'll see how this works, and if it does, it doesn't. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Triple Droll, never really came up. Triple Shifter, again, very rarely did I put this in, because I was like, okay, well, I can handle this matchup as it is. And then when I did put it in, I was like, okay, well, if I see it, great. If I don't, it's just a dart to reveal. Triple Cosmic, like, this probably doesn't need to be in here. This was just one of the ones where I was worried that there was going to be some floodgates that I needed to deal with, or cards I needed a quick play to chain to. So stuff like Anti-Spell, if my opponent was playing other floodgates, like Rivalries, everything like that. So, and the last one is Evenly Matched. It kind of, like, I understand it. There's a lot of decks that are either maining this in the top cuts or siding it, and then there's a lot of decks that just aren't playing it at all. Completely understandable, but again, kind of give and take to see how it fits. So ultimately, when you take into account the Wednesday games that I played on this and the Saturday games I played on this, I ended up playing 8 rounds. Of those 8 rounds, I lost twice and drew once. The 2 times I lost was just horrendous bricks. And like when you're facing sprites, and when I was annoyingly facing Furhighs and they just go off and you can't stop them, then there's like their board's obviously going to be very, very powerful. And you're sitting there when they've got like +6 in the hand, they've got all the hand traps imaginable, and you're trying to break their board, which has got a bounce and a gate, a herald, and everything else in between. It's kind of like, okay, I guess we're going to have to bench this one and try this a different way. The other one that I drew was against Super Heavy Samurais. Annoyingly, again, it's just one of them ones where if the deck goes unanswered and is allowed to build their board, the board's absolutely insane. And then he dropped a big Benkei on me, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realise people were playing that. So when he brought out a 3500 defender, he even played the horns that let him do double attack or double damage. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So we won the game 1, and that game 1 was such a grind. It took us like 30 minutes. We went into game 2. I blitzed that very quickly, and then we weren't able to start game 3 because sad days. But yeah, that's it for the profile. I hope this has been in-depth enough to kind of give you my feedback on the deck and kind of routes and angles that I want to take with it and change it up. I really do enjoy the deck. I feel that I'm still trying to find the right ratios that fit me. There's a lot of builds out there. There's a lot that are worth testing. A lot of tech, so like for example, the Yugioh is a perfect example for that. Test it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you in my example, then you take it out. The Kaiju's in the main, opposed to something like Karakura, whether you want to play DD Crows, whether you want to be playing main deck the shifters, side the shifters, you name it. It's a lot of experimenting, a lot of trial and error, but the deck is built that way. Like, there's a lot to think about. You need to maintain your resources, you need to make sure you've got the right attributes in the hand to trigger their effects, and everything like that. So it's a very good deck that makes you think, and I'm quite glad that they've got some nice new future support, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more, maybe some more like Link monsters or something else like that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.